Hello and welcome back to Baking with a Purpose. I'm Jamie and today we have our actually last episode. We're going to be talking about the grand finale, the biggest topic, the one that I felt was basically encompassed by all the other topics I talked about. And so today we're going to be talking about the role that the government plays in reproductive health. So just to give you a little bit of background on the issue, because so many aspects of reproductive health care are controlled by the government, like I said, I really thought this would be a great grand finale. It's like they control what kind of care we can get, when we can get it, where we can get it, how much we pay for it, different things like that. And like I said in episode 3, men are currently 76% of Congress members, 66% of Supreme Court judges, and all presidents up to this point and continuing on have been men, and so have all the vice presidents. So because of this, they are mostly the ones who get to decide how the government responds to reproductive health care and what kind of actions they're going to take to either protect it or dismantle it. In 1973, I think most people are familiar with this, but Roe versus Wade allowed women to make the choice, their own choice about their pregnancy and whether they were going to keep it or terminate it. And since then, as before, abortion rights and reproductive rights are under attack along with Planned Parenthood. One example that they use is the state of Texas, which as of now has 11 laws on the books that restrict abortion in some way, but they also have some of the worst numbers in the country for maternal, teen, and infant mortality. So although these things may not necessarily be connected, it stands to reason that if they claim to have women's health in the forefront of their minds, they really don't, because the other policies that they have in place don't really do much to protect women and teens and infants from death or serious complications or any kind of other health issues. Then one thing besides abortion in general that the government has sort of been cracking down on in recent years is Planned Parenthood. Through Title X, they usually receive about $60 million per year for services for low-income women, about 1.5 million women, actually, to be exact, for services like pregnancy and STI tests, cervical and breast cancer screenings, birth control, pregnancy services, referrals to doctors, to OBGYNs, any counseling, anything like that. In 2019, however, the Trump administration said that Planned Parenthood had to stop referring women to doctors who perform abortions or they would risk losing their Title X funding. And it's really important to note here that abortions make up about between 3 and 12% of services that Planned Parenthood provides, at least in 2013, and the numbers usually stay pretty consistent from what I saw. So it's not like it's a huge amount. People like Orrin Hatch actually said that on the floor that Planned Parenthood's 94% of the services they provide are abortions, which is not correct, and the math was done incorrectly, and that has actually been debunked. But yeah, between 3 and 12% is abortions in Planned Parenthood. And continuing on, instead of accepting the Title X money and going along with the rule, which is not part of their mission, they decided to stop accepting the federal money. And so that means that states are left to pick up the slack. And this has been difficult for many states that are hostile to reproductive rights. But in Oregon, for example, we have the Reproductive Health Equity Act, which I hadn't heard of, but it was signed into law in 2017 by our governor, Kate Brown. This is an extremely important law for many reasons, but just a couple reasons. It expands reproductive health care coverage at no out-of-pocket cost to Oregonians who are covered by a commercial health plan that's regulated by the state. It allows for reproductive health care coverage to people in Oregon who are undocumented. It bans commercial insurance from discriminating against people based on their gender identity, and it affirms Roe v. Wade and Oregonians' right to an abortion. So this law is obviously progressive, obviously groundbreaking, But something interesting to note is that almost all of the people that I interviewed are from Oregon, and almost all of them hadn't heard of this law before. And I think it's because Oregon is very liberal, and we sort of take that for granted. We don't really worry about our rights here. But anywhere else, it would have been big news, and it's not surprising that we would have a law like this, which is great. And of course, it would be a miracle if other states could pass laws like this, but obviously, based on what we know in the past history of government leaders that are hostile to reproductive rights, this is not really likely in the near future, at least. We can hope for someday, but probably not within many, many years. And so the first steps, educate yourself about your rights and what you can and can't do. Vote for people whose views reflect yours in reproductive health and who you know will protect your rights if that's something that's a priority for you. Raise awareness about how the government can be more friendly to women's and anybody's reproductive rights. And just do your research. Like, see what you can do to help. Volunteer, donate to Planned Parenthood. We know that they need our help. So for me, to raise awareness, I'm going to be baking a vanilla cake with strawberry jello frosting, which I'm really excited about. I've never made this before, so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to be frosting a message on it that encompasses what my interviewees had to say about the government's role in reproductive rights. And so if you want to see the final product and you want to hear some real women talk about how they view the government's role in reproductive rights, then stick around and let's get started. Okay, so my hands are washed and I got my apron on to protect my clothes, and we're gonna get started with the ingredients. We're gonna get started making the cake. This is the vanilla cake that I made in episode 1, but I'm still gonna link the recipe in the description below. And this is actually a new kind of frosting I've never made before. I thought might as well try something new, so we're gonna be using Jello strawberry frosting. Hopefully it's good. If not, we'll come up with a plan B. But bake along with me if you want, or just sit back and relax. So one thing I want to quickly note about the cake recipe, as in the first episode where I made vanilla cake with vanilla frosting, you're going to want to double this recipe if you like me are going to make 2 cake pans worth of batter. If you want to make a 2-layer cake, the recipe just does 1 layer. So if you want to make a 1-layer cake, then go ahead and just follow the recipe as it is in the link. And if you're going to do what I'm doing and make 2, then you're going to want to double that recipe. And so here's what you're going to need for the cake. 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter, softened. I put it in the microwave for about 1 minute and 5 seconds. A cup of granulated sugar, 2 large eggs, 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract, a cup and a half of flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 12 tablespoons of buttermilk. I use regular buttermilk, but the recipe gives you a way to make your own using whole milk and apple cider vinegar if you don't have any buttermilk on hand.
Birth control should be covered more. Like I know there's some private insurance plans, like if the boss is like Christian or whatever and like doesn't believe in birth control, they can not cover it if they don't want to. Like I think everything should just be like I don't think private insurance is a good thing for everybody. Like I'm pretty fortunate to be able to have it through my parents, but like not everybody can, and that sucks.
I would say you need to say the word abortion. You need to be very clear about what we're talking about, what we're advocating for, which is abortion access. You need to call it what it is, not under the women's health care, because it's not just women that need abortion. And yeah, that would be my main recommendation, I guess, is naming it, and that makes it easier to start legislating to make it actually accessible.
College, I marched on pro-abortion in Washington, D.C. So it hasn't changed. You know what's actually been the most shocking thing to me is that I am shocked that things have gotten worse. Like, you know, when I was marching in Washington, D.C. in the 90s, like I just sort of assumed there would be this trajectory to more access rather than to less. Well, I think, you know, people that want to limit reproductive rights are taking every opportunity to limit it. And so when they're saying that abortion is not an essential service, it's just another way to limit it. But of course it's essential. I mean, it's a time sensitive. So just like, you know, other time sensitive procedures are being allowed to proceed in this, that is also a time sensitive, very time sensitive procedure. I mean, Oregon is actually a pretty good state. So, you know, I think with the access in Oregon is quite good. And I've never had a patient that has had trouble. I guess I have so many, but one of my other pet peeves relates around PMS. And, you know, lots of times, women will get upset and they'll be like, oh, she's just PMSing, and they'll just use that as a way to dismiss entirely whatever she's talking about. And I have a strong belief that, you know, whatever your issues are, whatever you're thinking are the same, and the hormone imbalance that happens like right before the period can accentuate any thought or feeling that you're already having. But I like to really validate for women that, you know, those issues that might come up for them more during the PMS time are true issues. And in fact, sometimes you really want to pay attention to those issues, because sometimes there are things that really bother you. And
I got an IUD right after Trump was elected, because I knew that like they were going to come after all of our rights and stuff. I am not getting pregnant while this is going on, because so many people like on the religious right, and there's so much disinformation that they put out there that's so wrapped up in emotions and fear and all this crap. So that's really important to get like the reality out there, but it's hard to do that. Like, how do we do that? How do we normalize it? It's like, yeah, it's just a medical procedure, and it's not like, you know, but I don't know how we're going to get away from it right now, because that's like, so like that fervor, so frothed up by like the GOP and stuff, so they can maintain power, because that's really the only thing they have going for them is hatred of the other, and like women should be forced to have babies.
Right.
So I don't know, and it really scares me. Like, that's why I went and got the IUD, because I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen, and like this is the only thing I have. And I was still on OHP too, because like otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do it. It was really lucky that it happened like while my second child was still less than a year old, so I got to get it, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to.
Okay, so the cakes are out of the oven and they're cooling. And while they're cooling, we're going to make the frosting. So like I said earlier, we're going to be making strawberry jello frosting. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the regular strawberry jello or raspberry. You could use whatever flavor you want. It doesn't matter. The recipe doesn't matter what flavor you use. I just like strawberry the best, so this is what I'm going with. And it's going to be a nice, pretty pink color, hopefully, by the time we're done. Something that I really want to add about the frosting before we make it is that it sets, and I'll put this in the description with the recipe as well if you want to go back and look through, but it sets very quickly, and I think the article mentions this too, but because of the consistency of it with the gelatin, you're going to want to work fast. So if you're going to pipe this, you're going to want to do that pretty quickly after you make it. You don't want to have it be sitting around, or else it'll get hard-ish and like a weird texture, it looks like. So I'm going to do it after a while, once I know the cakes are cool, not like usual where I kind of wait for them to cool and then I make the frosting. I'm just going to let them cool and then make the frosting, so that by the time they're ready to be cut and iced, that the frosting will just be ready to go. So here's what you're going to need for the frosting. 1 3-ounce package of Jell-O. I use strawberry, but you can use any flavor you want. 2/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. 1 egg white. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. 1/2 cup of boiling water.
The just dialogue towards women in general is pretty shitty. And even though it seems disconnected, it sort of isn't. And I don't know. I'm not in touch with like a lot of like to see how it's affecting a lot of like younger people, but I can't imagine that, you know, that it's like great. And I don't know. I just don't think that talking about people like that or having like leadership that speaks that way about people is the greatest. So if I was to start anywhere, it would just be with that, to just like get that garbage like out of the national scene. I just think that it's trashy. And it's just like not a way to speak about anybody or women, and it's just not a good foundation for even beginning to talk about anything like reproductive health. You can't even begin to have a mature discussion. You have people like trashing other people or women like that. It's just like a bad foundation. Mothers are the foundation of the universe. Like, they literally birth the universe, and if you care about the universe, you should care about the womb that it comes from. And so then you should care about reproductive health.
On a national level, shit's not safe to worry about. So like, we can't trust them to make good decisions. So like, I think that's amazing that she stepped up to do so, to protect us, because that's wonderful.
Yeah, we're super lucky here.
I'm from Oklahoma, so
Yeah. So
trust me, I know exactly how lucky I am to live here.
And so the message I chose today is say the word, which I think really it kind of wraps up the episode, because a lot of the things that we talked about were people just not being aware in the government of the problems that women face and anybody faces when they're trying to get reproductive health. And Becca, the inspiration for this project, who I was super lucky to get to interview, that's one of the things that she said when I asked her, what can the government be doing right now to improve women's health? And what she said was they need to say the word, and you will hear that, but it will really help if they name it, if they make it into a bigger, deal, I guess, because once leaders are aware of how abortion and reproductive rights as a whole affect women, they may be more apt to listen and really try to enact policies that are helpful and just, helpful to people who are trying to seek quality, affordable reproductive health. So I think that is a really important thing for this topic, and I'm really excited to get started. So let's do it.
Like, we have to like really make people understand that it is like serious, and like our rights are actually under real threat, because there's a lot of people that like don't think it's a big deal, because they're like, right, oh no, that can't happen, that's not going to happen. And it's like, but yeah, like they just got 2 Supreme Court seats, and you know, if Trump gets this next election, they very likely could get at least 1 more, you know, like. And it's just getting people to understand how serious it is, and just getting people to understand the reality, like the whole freaking like heartbeat bills and shit like that. And it's like, it's not a heart, it's just one little like pulsing vein type thing, like artery, you know, it's not real, like it's not a person. We just have to agree to disagree. And I'm like, but no, it's not an agree to disagree thing.
I wasn't insured at that time, and the Health Care Act actually absolved me of any payment for that, so it was a free procedure. You know, thankfully to the state of Oregon for, you know, helping take care like that.
The ones who are making the decisions, they know and they don't care, because this is how they get it. And it's just, we just really have to like it's all like political, and we have to actually like do the shit. We can't just keep hoping somebody else is going to do it. We have to like stand up and be like, no, this is not okay. And I don't really know how to do that. Like, it's because it's really scary, you
Yeah.
know? like before 2016, it's all like, oh, well, we could, you know, we're just going to get the word out, you know, and just keep trucking and doing stuff. And it's like, but yeah, like, it's now these things are at risk of becoming more and more entrenched, when we were going the other way, and we should have kept going that way, but now we're like so far regressed. And I mean, it was going bad too. Like, it's just, it's
Yeah.
hard. And I hate it, and it makes me feel really scared a lot of the times, because, you know, I have a daughter, and I'm just like, you know, what's going to happen to her someday?
Like, what can we do better as a society in terms of reproductive health?
Keep funding Planned Parenthood. I think that's a big one.
So there we have it, our finished cake. I think it looks pretty good. The only thing is, when you're whipping the frosting, you need to whip it for a lot longer than you think you have to get it smooth, but it spreads really well, and overall I think it turned out great. Okay, so our cake is done. It looks great, and I just want to thank you for joining me today. I really hope you learned something. I definitely did. And be sure to check out the links in the description. As I said earlier, I've posted the recipes for both the frosting and the cake in the description if you want to follow along. As usual, again, I've posted different kinds of sources that I used in this video, so you can look back at that too. And I've also linked just like general reproductive health sources, FAQs, Planned Parenthood, anything you might need to know for further research. I've linked that too. And you can definitely leave a comment if you have a comment, if you have a question, if you just want to talk about reproductive rights, then go ahead and leave a comment, and I look forward to hearing from you. But this is our last episode, and I really hope you enjoyed baking along with me. If you did, and if you didn't, then I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you learned something, and thanks for coming along with me. Bye.